I'm physically ill. The Sacramento Kings are making me sick on top of that. And I don't know if this is going to be a podcast or just a rant or what the heck we're in store for. We'll find out together here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege, I guess, of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10, blah, 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 blah. This might be my most unprofessional podcast to date, right? I'm putting in as much effort into this podcast as the Sacramento Kings put into defending the three. And before you turn this podcast off and go, well, I'm not listening to this crap, understand that, one, yes, I'm sick. I'm not making an excuse for myself. I think it's actually fitting to approach the podcast this way and talk about this team in this manner at this point, right? This season over? It feels like it. Right? It doesn't feel like an overreaction to look at the Sacramento Kings losing 122-106, getting rinsed for the third straight game. They've lost 4 straight to start this stretch of doom. You thought I was just calling it that for fun and as a bit. Oh, no, this was a deadly stretch, and the Sacramento Kings are 0-4 so far to start it and still have the hardest teams coming into their building over the next couple of weeks. This season feels over. Sure, they're still in the play-in position. Yeah, they probably will still make it into the play-in. Should I care? Should I believe at all that the Sacramento Kings are going to do anything of value in the play-in? And even if somehow miraculously they make it out of the play-in, like I talked about on last night's Locked On Kings podcast after the Kings lost to the Golden State Warriors, it doesn't feel like it's a win at this point for the Sacramento Kings to somehow scratch and claw and limp their way into the playoffs, only to get absolutely obliterated by a real NBA team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then go into a summer where clearly a lot of changes have to be made, right? This team is not good. The state of this organization is dreadful, right? Look at how the Sacramento Kings played tonight. 122-106. I played better perimeter defense than the Kings did tonight. Like they don't, I mean, I don't want to say they don't care because I know that's not true. And I don't want to call them quitters either, because to me, suggesting a team quits, and we've seen this team quit before, suggesting that they quit, it's almost like one of the worst sins, the worst accusations you can make in professional sports. Suggesting that a professional athlete, a competitor, quit is close to as bad as it gets. And yet, you watch the same thing that I did tonight. What did that look like to you? It looked like the Sacramento Kings, they didn't take care of the basketball as well. They took care of the basketball about as well as I'm taking care of my physical health right now, doing a podcast when I should be in bed sleeping and removing the Sacramento Kings from my thoughts, right? They were terrible taking care of the basketball in this game. Turned the ball over 19 times, which led to 38 points for the Phoenix Suns. And they allowed the Phoenix Suns to shoot 55% from three-point range. They made 24 threes tonight. Meanwhile, the Sacramento Kings, 8 of 32, 25% from three-point range. You know, I know I've annoyed many of you by talking a lot about Mike Brown since he was fired. And I'm genuinely sorry to do it again, but I feel it's justified to talk about. Mike Brown was blamed. Mike Brown was straight up blamed for his team not fighting hard enough for him, especially on the defensive end. Mike Brown was blamed for losing the locker room. It cost him his job. Now you have Doug Christie, who is, and I know this for a fact, loved in that locker room. Very well respected by this group of players. And still, for Doug Christie, they are standing and watching and giving the bare freaking minimum when it comes to closing out on a three-point shooter. I don't know if it's a horrendous game plan by the Sacramento Kings to constantly leave three-point shooters wide open, or if players can't find it in themselves to try hard enough on a simple closeout and give the effort that they need to give to at least attempt to try and change a shot or put a hand in a shooter's face. They don't do it. They don't try to do it. They haven't tried to do it over the last 3 games, but it's been especially egregious over these last 2 back-to-back nights where the Kings could care less about closing out on three-point shooters. And they could care less about taking care of the basketball. So if Mike Brown was blamed and fired because these players quit on him, because he couldn't inspire them to play hard enough in the early stages of the season, I'm not saying Doug Christie should be fired and lose his job, because I don't blame Doug Christie for this at all. The point I'm trying to make is that this has always been a roster problem. The players that, quite frankly, wanted Mike Brown gone, going back to last offseason, they're the ones still on this team that are not getting the job done and not putting in the effort that is expected of a team in a playoff race in the home stretch of the freaking season. If they're not going to try hard for a coach they love in must-win games in a playoff race, why is it Mike Brown's fault that they gave up on him so early in the season? I know it's easier to fire one guy than it is to get rid of a locker room or completely overhaul a roster. And I've been consistent with it. The Kings fired Mike Brown because it was easy, not because it was his fault. The problem has always been aspects of this roster. And the main problem has always been the construction of this roster and the people that are putting it together. This front office has to go. And unfortunately, ownership is absolutely a problem here. Zach LaVine, who for some reason now is just refusing to shoot the basketball. Zach LaVine took 13 shots in today's game, but he had like 7 or 8 shots late in the third quarter. Right? Zach LaVine now, a guy who's paid almost $50 million to score, is not shooting or scoring. He did have 21 points, a fairly efficient 7 of 13 from the field. He was giving as little effort as everybody else was on the defensive end of the floor. Right? Zach LaVine is a guy that ownership, Vivek Ranadive, has wanted here in Sacramento for a long time. And if you look back through the history of the Sacramento Kings, Vivek Ranadive has been infatuated with certain players, and those players typically end up on the roster. Zach LaVine, Buddy Hield, Nick Stauskas. The list goes on and on. There's nothing you can do about that, unfortunately. And we all read the article from Sam Amick. We all know all of the turmoil that's happening behind the scenes with ownership and with this organization. That's stuff that sucks, and you hope just goes away or fixes itself, because you can't get rid of that. You can't change that. But you've gotten rid of the wrong things. You traded De'Aaron Fox when you did not have to. And even if you felt De'Aaron Fox quit on this team, and even if he wasn't playing because he's getting surgery right now, let's say the Kings held on to him and let it ride through the rest of the season. So freaking be it. I would have rather the Sacramento Kings done that instead of trying to fool us with this pitiful attempt, an all-in attempt at just barely scraping into the playoffs, as if that means anything, by playing bad basketball and putting together a pickup roster that you would find at like a Cal Fit, or that you would make on NBA 2K. Right? That's what this Kings team is. And I've been saying this. I've been concerned about this for weeks, for a month since the trade deadline. And I've been called a hater. I've been called a De'Aaron Fox apologist for it. I'm not happy to be right. Do I look like I'm enjoying myself? Do you look like I'm enjoying being correct about my assumptions of what I believe the Sacramento Kings team to be? Do I look like I'm enjoying being right about being terrified of this stretch of doom that still hasn't even gotten to its worst stretch yet? Do I look happy? Do I look like I'm enjoying myself to you? Kings fans who were like me, pessimistic, who believe that holding on to De'Aaron Fox and maybe looking for something better in the offseason, those people weren't just hating because it's fun. because some of us saw this team and saw the shortcomings and didn't believe that they were going to be able to overcome the clear flaws and clear holes on this roster. I don't know if a full blow up needs to happen. I don't know if it's even realistic to expect a full blow up at this point for the Sacramento Kings, but something clearly has to change. Big things have to change with this organization, and no Cinderella story run through the play-in and making it to the playoffs and the moral victory of at least getting back to the postseason only to get rinsed by OKC or another really good team in the West. That doesn't change that fact. And at this point, what have you seen in the last 4 games to suggest that the Sacramento Kings can even make that pipe dream possible? What have you seen? Like I said, the season feels over. They're still very much in the hunt. And they probably still will be a play-in team. But I don't have any reason to believe that that means anything for this group. And that certainly doesn't feel like any cause for celebration, especially considering how this team is actively approaching these very significant games. They quit on Mike Brown earlier in the season. Mike took the fall for it. De'Aaron Fox got traded and made the bad guy when leaving town because he saw the problems and he asked questions of this organization that Domantas Sabonis is going to start asking this offseason, that DeMar DeRozan is going to ask this offseason. I'd say Zach LaVine too, but he's paid so much money, I don't think he's going anywhere. Right? This is where we're at. This is where the Kings are at. And it sucks. It doesn't feel good. It's not enjoyable. And while it's not over, it mathematically, it certainly feels like it is. 4 home games. 4 home games next week against Memphis, against Cleveland, against Chicago, and against Milwaukee. And to be honest with you, I'm not even feeling good at that Chicago game at this point, based off of 1, how the Sacramento Kings are playing right now, and 2, how pitiful they've looked in back-to-backs over the last couple of weeks, or really the last week. Embarrassing. Dreadful. Predictable. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast, like I said at the top of the show, is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. It's so much fun to play on FanDuel, especially this time of the year, whether you're picking your favorites to make it through and make it out of the bracket, staying in on the action. Look, there's a lot of games happening at the same time. It's the madness in March Madness, right? But you can stay locked in to all of the action through FanDuel. Games happening almost every day, and there's always something exciting to bet on. And FanDuel is easy and fast, just like the action coming at you quickly. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid quickly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long. Locked On Kings is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, hey, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and actually start building wealth. You'll get some incredible insights that you didn't realize, right? When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending specifically on like coffee runs. My wife and I are Dutch Bro addicts, right? The amount of money we're spending at Dutch Bros was mind-boggling. And we realized that, and we were able to somewhat correct that when we started using Monarch Money. It's all in one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps and spreadsheets and Excel sheets and everything like that, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. Plus, there's easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Like I said, I didn't write down notes, so where do we go from here? Hey, Domantas Sabonis made his return. Hey, he had a triple-double. I think it's his 9th triple-double of the season. 12 points, 11 rebounds, 12 assists, did have 3 steals. Woohoo. Does it matter? And you know how much I love Domantas Sabonis. You know how much of a captain defender Sabonis I have been and probably always will be. Does it matter that Sabonis put up a triple-double? What matters is it was his first game back, and I know you expect there to be some rust and things like that, but it's his first game back. The Sacramento Kings got all of their main offensive weapons back, and once again, they barely broke 100. 106 points tonight. And again, like, you look back at recent games, they scored 106 tonight. They scored 104 last night against the Warriors. They scored 104 against the Knicks. They scored only 110 points in overtime against the Clippers. They scored only 110 points in their loss against the Denver Nuggets. They've lost 4 or 5 of their last 6 games at this point. This is the time that you're supposed to be playing your best basketball. And while we tried to lean on injuries as an excuse as much as freaking possible, now they're back to full strength and they're still playing bad. Once again, the start to this game was abysmal. They weren't taking care of the basketball. They fell behind 36-22. This is the third straight game, y'all, that they have fallen behind by 20 points or more. 3 straight games of falling behind by 20. And this game was a carbon copy of last night. Like almost deja vu, right? They fall behind big early, battle all the way back, got within 2 points right before halftime. Then it was a 5-point Suns lead at halftime. And then the Suns go and outscore the Kings 35-25 in the third quarter, run away with this game. Doug Christie once again has to empty the bench and let the end of bench and two-way guys finish out this game while we sit there with our head in our hands wondering what the hell did we just invest our time in that for? The state of the Kings, like, I wish I could sugarcoat it for you. I wish I could find a way to try and be optimistic. Like, Keegan Murray played really well, at least in the first half. 14 points, 8 rebounds in this game, 6 of 13 from the field, 2 of 8 from three-point range. I don't know if he even scored in the second half. And if he did, it was barely anything, right? Like, okay. Zach LaVine took more shots than he did last night. That's good, but he still, for some reason, is just not shooting the basketball. DeMar DeRozan also took 13 shots in this game. Malik Monk had a surge during that second quarter comeback where he looked really good, but ultimately shot more than anybody else on the team. Went 8 of 18 from the field, 0 of 8 from three-point range, and he turned the ball over 4 times. DeMar DeRozan turned the ball over 5 times. Zach LaVine turned the ball over a couple of times. Like, these are your best players. These are your stars. These are the guys you lean on, and these are veterans. This is not a young team making these mistakes. These are vets. But every time, like, there have been stretches where they're figuring things out. But I don't know. In fact, actually, I do know. I think that, like, they fooled us. They fooled us during these stretches. Or more specifically, they played well and figured things out against bad basketball teams. I thought the Phoenix Suns were a bad basketball team, but when they have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, they're talented. They're more talented than their record suggests. So maybe they're a bad basketball team by record, but talent-wise, they are a very good basketball team. And they smack the Sacramento Kings around. The Kings can handle their business against bad teams all they want, and it's great. That's fun. Unfortunately, the Sacramento Kings won't be playing bad basketball teams in the play-in or in the playoffs. So when they get there, they're showing us exactly what's going to happen. If they get there, they're showing us exactly what's going to happen. Like, if the Kings go 1-3 next week, that probably is a good result for them at this point. Just not getting straight up swept in the next 4 home games over next week, right? Memphis will probably destroy them. Memphis coming off of a loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight. Then you have Cleveland 2 nights later, who is going to roll you. Again, I don't want to be this. And I know Sacramento Kings fan. I mean, how did we get here? Less than 2 years ago. Finally, things turned around, and talk about a fall from grace. More like a plummet from grace. I'm at a loss, man. And the problem is, like, I don't know where the Kings go. I don't know where they go. And they put themselves in this position. I don't know where they go. I couldn't even begin. Like, I'm obviously not a good general manager and not capable of being a general manager. But I have zero clue of where a new front office would even start with this group. because I know for a fact ownership doesn't want a full reset and full rebuild because they're racking up ticket prices left and right. And I don't think Kings fans are going to be willing to pay top dollar to watch a horrendous product as they rebuild for the next couple of years. Plus, as we know, ownership will forever be involved in decisions, which is pretty common in professional sports. Owners typically have their say, but clearly there's such thing as overstepping. And this ownership group might be known for that a time or two. I don't know. Maybe if I hopefully sleep off this illness and sleep off this loss, and we can take Sunday to gather our thoughts and pile into the Golden One Center on Monday and hope for something better from the Sacramento Kings and see if they can turn things around and get a surprising win over Memphis and build some momentum back up for themselves. Maybe we could feel better. Maybe I can fool myself or trick myself into believing they have a chance again. But a chance at what? A chance at what? Making it to the playoffs? Again, it means nothing to me at this point. With the state of this team, you talk about getting playoff experience. Matt, it's important for this team to get playoff experience. DeMar DeRozan doesn't need playoff experience. I know Zach LaVine has only been to the playoffs, I think, once in his career. But what is playoff experience going to do for Zach LaVine, who is as established as it gets in the NBA? Domantas Sabonis has been to the playoffs multiple times. Playoff experience would be good for Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis and Jake LaRavia, I guess. But are we expecting that to be the big three of the Sacramento Kings going forward? No, those are role players. Making it to the playoffs at this point not only is very unlikely, it means nothing. The season means nothing. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. All right. Enough of my doom and gloom. You want to share your thoughts? Have at it. At Matt George Sack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I'm going to go take some ibuprofen, some Tylenol, and try and forget this one. But I won't forget you. I appreciate your support. Love you for riding with me all season long. Hopefully we'll finish the season out together no matter what. I'll be back on Monday night inside the Golden One Center for Kings and Grizzlies. Hopefully it's at bare minimum a competitive game. Until next time, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.